Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Mike Leddy, and I will be chairing this hearing of Subcommittee C of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the proceedings? Can you also turn off your cameras with the exception of committee members, unless you are the person speaking. This is to reduce broadband width. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing, and it'll be my responsibility to ensure and check that that is adhered to. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones on silent and ensure that they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distraction or any unnecessary noise emanating from a radio, TVs, etc. Thank you. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of the subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these types of meeting. I advise you that the meeting is held in public, and the meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's website on the YouTube. And that members of the press and public may record and take photographs, except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. All declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies submitted on behalf of Councillor Brennan, Eustace and Locke, and Councillor Leddy, Councillor Sharp and Councillor Straker-Wells were the nominated substitute members respectively. Can I welcome you to this hearing in respect of the review application submitted in regards to DC Mini Market, 138 Church Road, Yardley, Birmingham, B25 8UT. I'll begin with some introductions. As previously stated, I'm Councillor Mike Leddy, and I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. And with me are members Councillor Martin Straker-Wells and Councillor Mike Sharp. Good morning, both. Also present in this meeting are the following officers. Licensing Officer Bhupinder Nandra. Good morning.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone.
Our Committee Manager, Katie Townsend. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair.
And our Committee Lawyer, Joanne Swampilia. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair.
Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please, starting with the applicants. That's Birmingham Trading Standards. I believe I've got Dawn Bunsey and Paul Elson. Is that correct?
Good morning. Yes, Dawn Bunsey, correct.
And have you got Mr. Elson with you?
Yes, Paul Elson present. That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. And those making representations, West Midlands Police?
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Chris Jones.
Good morning. Licensing Enforcement?
Yes, good morning, Chair. Sharon Watts. Thank you.
And Gallagher JTI representative?
Yes, Ian Howell is here.
Good morning, Mr.
Good morning.
Howell.
Good morning, everyone.
Ms. Watts and who is it from West Midlands Police?
Chair, Chris Jones.
Mr. Jones, hello.
Hello, good morning.
And then we have the license holder and his representative, Mr. Sheikh Kapoor, is that correct?
Yeah, good morning to all.
And Mr. Sheikh Kapoor, you've got representation from Miss Cartmel, is that right?
Yeah,
Hi, Chair. Good afternoon. Sorry, good morning, councillors. It's been a long morning already. One of those. Nice to meet you all. Yes, I represent the licence holder. Thank you.
Can I ask if any person making representation wishes to withdraw their representation at this stage of the hearing? If it's silent, I will take it that you don't wish to. Got silence. I will assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may, at my discretion, amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you all that any such amendments will not impact on a party's right to a fair hearing. We will be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. If you click on that speech bubble and go into chat, you will then have access to the chat function for any reason. Please use the raise a hand function to indicate that you wish to speak. That button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar, and you can, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm that you do have access to the chat facility by typing your own name, and officers will type their job titles as well, and the meeting will not proceed until you've done so? And when everyone has typed in, Katie, if you can confirm, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, Chair, we have everyone in the chat now.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you can please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat, I'd appreciate it. If any participant, we haven't got anyone dialed in, have we, Katie?
I don't think so, Chair.
Oh, okay, I'll skip that one. With the exception of the subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. If there are problems with bandwidth, which cause difficulties with the sound, I may, at my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard, which is the most important thing. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or using the raised hand function now. No. Okay. I'll now briefly outline the proceedings which we will be following at the hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer, Mr. Bhupinder Nandra, will present the report. Then the applicant, that's Birmingham Trading Standards, will be asked to present their case, and we're asking that this is kept to 20 minutes. Then those making representation will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Then the license holder and their representative will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed. Can I ask all parties to speak slowly and clearly as they possibly can, because officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed on the council's website. If at any time somebody's else turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate. Also note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representation will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate, and then only through the chair. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or by those present, please signify this using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you're viewing. The meeting manager will alert me if I don't notice any messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which questions are dealt with. Additionally, you may also seek to notify a question or point verbally in the usual way at the appropriate point. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function, and we'll ensure that we come to you at an appropriate moment. If at any point you can't hear or are having problems with your internet connection, also please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager, and then I will ask the person speaking to repeat what they've just said. It is therefore important that you do use the chat function as soon as you're unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people still having their microphones and cameras on, which creates interference. So once again, I will remind you to please mute your microphone and keep your camera off when you're not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice, and at my discretion, I will ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within the Microsoft Teams facility. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note that if at any time the live streaming being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live streaming is restored. If at any time the meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream, and once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that live streaming has resumed before we all continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I'll invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and relevant officers will withdraw to our meeting place to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft meeting itself. In the event that the members need to clarify any points, you will be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. Notification of the determination of the application will be sent out to all parties within 5 working days. I hope that's all reasonably straightforward. So with that, can I ask our licensing officer?
Yeah. Sorry, before we start, can I just ask if anybody is talking to report, can they let us know what page number they're talking to, please? Just makes life easier.
Noted. I hope everyone's taken note of those comments from Councillor Shah. I will now ask our licensing officer to present the report. Mr. Nandra, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Chief Inspector of Weights and Measures applied on the 14th of June 2021 for a review of the premises licence under Section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003 for DC Mini Market, 138 Church Road, Yardley, Birmingham, B25 8 UT. The purpose of the report is to consider an application to review a premises licence. Representations have been received from West Midlands Police and Birmingham City Council Licensing Enforcement as responsible authorities, which are attached at Appendices 1 and 2. A representation has been received from other persons, which is attached at Appendix 3. The review application is attached, see Appendix 4. The premises licence is attached at Appendix 5, with the site location plans attached at Appendix 6. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to modify the conditions of licence, exclude a licensable activity from the scope of the licence, remove the designated premises supervisor, suspend the licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, revoke the licence, or to take no action. Where the authority takes a step to modify conditions or exclude a licensable activity, it may provide that the modification or exclusion is to have effect for only such period not exceeding 3 months or as it may specify. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Cartmel, can I ask you to switch your camera off? I would appreciate it.
Of course, Chair. It's nothing personal, I hope. Oh, sorry. I've lost the sound.
Right, that's all right.
I've got the sound back. I'll turn my camera off now. All right, thank you.
All right.
Oh, on the
That's good. That's it. Right, we now move to the applicant. Ms. Bunsey, can you give us your statements, please?
Yes, good morning, Chair. On the 12th of March, trading standards were involved in an intelligence-led operation which targeted businesses suspected of selling illicit tobacco products. The operation was referred to as Operation CC. It was carried out with the assistance of a dog handler and tobacco sniffer dogs. The officers attended the premises at approximately 12:50 of DC Mini Market, 138 Church Road, Yardley, B25 8 UT. Officer Singh spoke to a male behind the till who gave his name as Abdullah El Yassi. He was asked if he was the owner or manager, and Mr. El Yassi replied that he was just a shop assistant. At that point, another male walked in who said he was the licensing owner. This person was Mohammed Sheikhpur, who is the license holder. Officer Singh issued Mr. Sheikhpur a notice of powers and rights from a premises search book 417. At this point, the search commenced, and the dog handler and the dog indicated that there may be tobacco concealed on the bottom shelf of a central display island, which was near the rear of the shop. Access was gained to the enclosure of the shelf unit by dismantling it, and inside a quantity of illicit tobacco was found. It was counted and seized. There were approximately 107 packets of illicit tobacco, which included hand-rolling tobacco, packs of foreign cigarettes, non-duty paid, cigarettes which breached the standardised packaging regulations, and also, as I said, cigarettes and pouches of hand-rolling tobacco, which was suspected of being counterfeit. Some of these samples were sent off to the relevant brand reps, specifically owned by JT International Group, Benson and Hedges and Amber Leaf. brands owned by Imperial Tobacco, specifically Lambert and Butler and Richmond. And on examination of these, we've since established that all of these are counterfeit. Inquiries are ongoing. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're on mute.
Councillor Sharp, any questions?
No, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Straker-Wells, any questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, Ms Bunsey, I don't know whether you or Mr Elson can answer. Of the 107 packets of tobacco that were seized, how many of those were brand names of JTI?
I can't confirm that at this minute, Chair, but I'll check that and get back to you.
No worries. We've got JTI present in this hearing, and it's probably a question I should ask them anyway.
Could I just make a comment, please, Chair, if I may? It's Paul Elson, Trading Standards.
Yes, by all means.
I've been doing searches for a very long time, particularly in relation to tobacco and alcohol. And what I would say in this case, because I was one of the officers who was present in the inspection on the day, the tobacco was extremely well concealed. I've never come across that type of concealment before. What had to happen, the actual display unit had to be physically dismantled, and there was an alcove underneath the shelving unit. It wasn't anywhere actually near the counter, and when I inspected the tobacco on the counter, that appeared, or certainly was, okay. There wasn't any loose tobacco or counterfeit tobacco or suspect tobacco at the counter. It was all in this one concealment place, which I say I've never come across and I've never heard of before, where the actual physical shelving unit had to be dismantled to gain access to the tobacco, which was extremely well concealed, and multiple variable different types of tobacco, but it was so tightly packed in, it would have took, in my opinion, at least half an hour to 3/4 hour to pack it in that tight, because it was such an excellent concealment. And if it wasn't for the dog, I mean, I certainly wouldn't have found it, because I've never seen such a concealment like that before.
Okay. Mr Elson, you were present, weren't you?
Yes, obviously.
I was. Now, how many packets of legitimate tobacco were on display?
And on display in the actual gantry, which is behind the counter where there's a legal duty to sell it behind a gantry, I would say there's approximately 100, I would have thought, and there certainly wasn't any illicit tobacco at the front of the premises where the counter was. It was all in this concealment area, and certainly most of the stuff that, or nearly all the stuff that was concealed, was you could pick straight away it was counterfeit, because it was older style packaging. It was packaging that doesn't comply with European regulations, so it's very easy to spot. The unusual thing is the fact it was so well concealed. I know that sounds odd and people do conceal it, but the fact it was so well concealed, I would never have found it.
Okay, so on a par, you had 100 or so packets, legitimate packets for sale in the cabinet, and then you found a further 107 packets of illicit tobacco products in a hideaway. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The way you check the gantry displays, obviously take the gantry up, and if you've seen it, you probably yourself, there's all the tobacco, and it's in a series of stacks, and you do the first, the third, the fifth, and go through that stack, because obviously if there is counterfeit stuff, some people tend to put it at the back of the stack, so it's all worth checking that. But no, all that was okay as far as I could see. There wasn't any illicit tobacco at the front of the shop, which again, it is unusual, because in my experience of doing this, when you're trying to sell a counterfeit product, you tend to have a sample to show people. because that's the nature of the business. But there wasn't any of that either. I don't know what inference you want to draw from that. But certainly I was there when the tobacco was found, and the gentleman behind the counter did look truly shocked that it had been found. Now, whether that was shock the fact he didn't know it was there, or he thought it would never be found, that is debatable. I can't possibly say.
Now, I'm just looking. This visit took place on the 12th of March.
Yeah, 12th of March 2021, yeah.
21?
Yeah.
Not 2020?
No, that's I think that's a mistake. It's 2021. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Now, a month before then, you had cause as a team to send letters out.
Yes.
Can you give us a bit of history of that?
Yeah, of course I can. If I may, Chair, I'll beg your indulgence. I'll go back a bit further than that. On the 8th of December 2020, I received a complaint that the premises were selling illicit products, alcohol, whatever, to persons under the age of 18 years old. Now, what had happened in that particular case, the premises had recently changed ownership, so it may have been that complaint related to the previous owner. I don't know. That can't be proved either way. But what did happen on that occasion, I went in and I gave the current owners there a full information pack relating to both underage sales and relating to tobacco, all its connotations, both the legal sale and what to look for when purchasing and what you can and can't sell. And those documents are done by something called Business Companion, which is a extremely well documented information pack which lists every piece of legislation that you're ever likely to know if you're a retailer of tobacco or alcohol, and he had those given to him on the day. Following that, my colleague Geary Warmington received a further anonymous complaint regarding the sale of illicit tobacco, and on that occasion he was written to, again drawing his attention to the consequences of supplying illicit tobacco if he was found to be supplying illicit tobacco. Visits weren't done at that time because, as we all know, the world changed rapidly. So he was just given us the information by post. That was sent out on in February, so he should have had all that information, but he already knew that information anyway. He had that information there, so all he had to do was just really read it. So from when I went in at the beginning of December to when we went again in March of the following year, he had all that information to go through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Does any member have any questions? No?
Yes, please, Chair. Sorry.
Councillor Sharp.
Can I ask, do we know what was actually in the counterfeit tobacco? What was it made up of, if that's possible to know?
Yes. There's a bit of an anomaly there, and I think probably my colleague from the tobacco industry may clarify this a bit for me, but the word counterfeit tobacco is unusual in the fact that it's both tobacco that is supplied for countries outside of the European Union, as was when we were in it. So though it's tobacco, it cannot be supplied within either the UK or the European Union, and that's because of both labelling regulations and restrictions on supply. So that's the first tranche. So it is actually tobacco, as it's stated on the actual packet, but it can't be supplied, and obviously in that case there'll be no duty paid on it. The second branch of counterfeit tobacco is tobacco that is exactly that. It's tobacco that comes from unknown sources that are manufactured in various countries in the world, China, the the Russian Republic, all sorts, and without having a full chemical analysis of every single piece of tobacco, that would be unknown. But obviously, in those countries, the level of handling and the safety of the actual tobacco is debatable, because the sheer virtue of that they come from all over the world. And the other thing is, if they're all in various scripts, various languages, you have no idea what's in them anyway, because you can't read that particular language. Okay, so that's the two different aspects of counterfeit and illegal tobacco. One is tobacco that was never intended for the UK market, which doesn't comply with our regulations, be it labelling or content requirements. And the second one is the straightforward counterfeit tobacco that can come from anywhere and can literally have anything in it, whether it's bits of wood, charcoal, various other leaves from various other parts of the world. So that's the two aspects. Certainly, from my understanding from this particular case, they haven't actually been analysed chemically. I think the representative from the tobacco company will say they are just straightforward illicit, i.e. products never intended for the UK market. Obviously, the tobacco companies in the UK make tobacco products for all the world, but there's various restrictions on certain places where tobacco can go and what that country requires, like Australia, New Zealand require difference from regulations to us, and the States and South America as well. Does that make it clear, Councillor?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Joanne, have you got any questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We will now move to those making representation, and we'll start with West Midlands Police.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Trading Standards had a very detailed representation and have touched on a lot of what I wanted to bring up and say, although I will go into a little bit more detail from my point of view. The big thing that Trading Standards stated, the operation was intelligence-led. That would indicate that the Trading Standards obviously had intelligence previously, which they had stated that the premises were supplying illicit tobacco products, and that intelligence would have obviously come from members of the public who have bought or are aware that tobacco, illicit tobacco was or would have been on sale at the premises. The fact there wasn't any behind the counter seems to be a little bit strange on the day. Perhaps it had all been sold, they'd run out, and were just about to restock with the items that were concealed. But as I say, from my point of view, it would definitely suggest that the premises has been selling illicit counterfeit tobacco. Obviously, as Trading Standards have already alluded to, there would be no tax or UK duty paid on these items because they shouldn't be for sale in this country, which obviously allows the premises to sell the items far cheaper than a normal retail premises abiding by the rules and selling legitimate products. This obviously gives them an unfair advantage within the retail world as a local shop, which could definitely have implications for traders that are trading legitimately, as they can't compete in price point and may lose customers. There were several victims in this trade of illicit products. The first one being the customers themselves. They are buying, especially the counterfeit products, probably believing they are true, genuine products and getting a bargain. This is not the case, councillors. As you've heard, the products could be dangerous for health. The premises would have no idea what were in these counterfeit products, whether they were fit for human consumption. They certainly don't meet British standards, so that would imply that they are harmful to health or more harmful than normal cigarettes that are regulated in this country. the illicit tobacco, councillors, unless you know and can read what's in them, how are you going to know what's in them to start with? Again, don't know whether it's harmful to health, whether it meets British regulations or not, and I'm guessing it doesn't. And the shop owners are not going to know that either. Total disregard for public safety. Total. The premises have had previous warnings, documentation sent by Trading Standards. They've obviously had this, been given it, been explained to it, and it's still taken no notice and seem to have no intention to uphold the licensing objectives, especially of public safety and the prevention of crime and disorder. Councillors, as I've said several times in various meetings, the trade in illicit tobacco and counterfeit tobacco is normally made by organised criminal gangs. This money goes back into funding further organised criminal activity, again draining resources from the police, Trading Standards, HMRC in investigating these crimes. Councillors, there is a bigger picture here than just selling a few cigarettes that shouldn't be sold in this country and are not available in this country. It's funding organised criminal activity. It is putting people's health at risk, possibly putting further strain on the NHS. Councillors, West Midlands Police have no confidence in the management of these premises and believe they have no intention to uphold the licensing objectives, especially around crime and disorder and public safety. Councillors, that's it from me, unless I can move any further assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Councillor Sharp.
No, thank you.
Councillor Straker-Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Just thanks for being reminded in the sense that the full import of this kind of activity goes well beyond the individual transaction. In other words, profits from the sales will, if you like, fund further criminal activity, but also, of course, counterfeit goods of this kind sold at a lower cost undermines other trade which is legitimate. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to ask if this, we've already seen a suggestion that this is a highly unusual activity, but have you come across anything like this before in your dealings?
Thank you, Councillor. Obviously, Trading Standards would be the lead agency in obviously counterfeit tobacco. There was a premises that I was actually at with Paul Elson that had, I can't remember whether very little or no counterfeit stroke illicit tobacco on display in the shop. But again, with the help of a tobacco sniffing dog, there was a significant amount of illicit tobacco found hidden in false walls and false ceiling compartments of a stock room. I believe at the time it was the largest amount of illicit cigarettes found in Birmingham, and we believe because of the concealment that they were actually acting as a supplier of illicit alcohol, illicit tobacco, importing it in and distributing it to the other shops. So obviously with the concealment, as described by Mr. Elson, in this case, it's a possibility that this could be the case, although councillors, I can't say with any authority on that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Joanne, any questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, we now move on to licensing enforcement. Sharon Watts.
Hello, Chair, councillors. My representations are in respect of DC Mini Market, 138 Church Road, Yardley, B25 8UT. The current premises licence holder, Mr Mohammed Sheikhpour, is also the designated premises supervisor at the premises and has been so since the licence was transferred into his name in February 2021 this year. On the 15th of June 2021, Birmingham Trading Standards Service submitted to the licensing service a request to review the premises licence following an inspection they had carried out on the 12th of March 2021, and as a result of that there was a subsequent amount of illicit counterfeit tobacco which was found and subsequently seized at the premises. Following on from that, it was a decision that licensing enforcement would conduct a Licensing Act inspection at the premises in order to assess compliance with the Licensing Act and the conditions attached to the subsequent licence. An inspection was conducted at the premises by myself on the 1st of July 2021. And on arrival at the premises, there were two male members of staff behind the counter, a Mr Matim Ali and a Mr Aso Amabpour. I introduced myself and explained that I intended to carry out a Licensing Act inspection to assess compliance with conditions. Mr Ali stated that he would call Mr Sheikhpour, the premises licence holder, and DPS and request for him to attend. So shortly after, Mr Sheikhpour did attend and I went through the conditions in respect of the licence. So under condition 2A, all staff will be trained regarding their responsibilities under the Licensing Act. There were no records of staff training and there was nothing maintained in relation to records being kept up to date every 12 months as per the requirement of the conditions. Mr Sheikhpour said that he had trained his staff verbally but had not recorded this. In relation to CCTV system, the condition states that the CCTV recordings have to be stored for a minimum of 31 days and can be accessed on site. I asked to see CCTV going back 31 days, so I asked to look at CCTV footage for the 31st of May, and Mr Sheikhpour stated that records for 1 month were wiped out when the recordings went into the next month, so the conditions were not being complied with in respect of CCTV. He was unable to show me CCTV recordings for the month for any date in June 2021. Therefore, another breach of the licence conditions. Mr Sheikhpour is also expected to keep a record to refuse sales of alcohol. I asked to see his refusals book and the last record of entry was the 8th of March 2021, and then there had been no other entries into that record book for the following 3 months. In relation to the condition consistent with and to promote public safety, all staff will be trained in emergency procedures and records maintained. Again, I asked to see these records and they could not be produced. So as a result of that, I issued a trader's notice informing Mr Sheikhpour that he was committing offences under the Licensing Act as he was breaching his conditions of licence. I informed him that I would carry out a further inspection at a later date to assess compliance. So I actually managed to go back to the premises yesterday and conducted a further inspection. Mr Sheikhpour arrived at the premises a couple of minutes after I attended, and again I asked him to show me CCTV recordings which would go back for 31 days. Mr Sheikhpour informed me that following my visit in July, he'd recalled an engineer out to the premises to sort out the CCTV system, and he was unable to show me the records going back 31 days as there hadn't been a long enough time span from the date of when the CCTV system was amended, which would have been on the 5th of July, he informed me. I also asked Mr Sheikhpour to show me his staff training records.
Sorry, Sharon, can I just interrupt?
Yes.
Chair, it's Bhupinder. The We've got a message in the chat saying that the internet has dropped for the solicitor for the premises licence holder.
It did, thank you. I've kept along with it just about, I think. So I'm back on.
Okay.
Thank you very much, though.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Sharon.
That's okay. So I asked Mr. Shakapur to provide me with his staff training records. He provided me with a template document for training in relation to the Licensing Act, but he was unable to provide me any record to show staff had received that training or he'd provided training to staff. So there was no signed documents suggesting that he had provided the training to any of his staff. He stated at the time that he now only employs one member of staff who was there yesterday, and his name, Mr. Sharifanajed. I think that's how you pronounce it. So there were no records produced for him. I also asked to see staff records in relation to emergency procedures, and again those records are required to be maintained. Mr. Shakapur provided me with a document which was on his mobile phone, just outlining various emergency procedures. Again, there was nothing provided to me in relation to a signed document to confirm that staff had received such training. He stated at the time that his solicitor had these records. Again, I was unable to verify this because I couldn't see the actual documents. So under section 136 of the Licensing Act, a person commits an offence if he carries on or attempts to carry on a licensable activity on or from any premises otherwise than under and in accordance with an authorisation. So Mr. Shakapur is clearly not complying with his conditions of his licence. He's had the premises licence since February this year, and therefore it would suggest that since that date, he has not been complying with his conditions of licence. In respect of the licensing objectives, Mr. Shakapur is clearly not upholding the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety, as the matter has been brought by trading standards in relation to the illicit tobacco, and this is seen as a serious matter. Again, I don't really have any more to say. Thank you.
Councillor Sharp, any questions?
No, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Straker-Wells, any questions?
Just one, Chair. The impression given about licensing enforcement is that there was a more or less total lack of compliance. But I just want to ask, and these questions may not be answerable in a sense, but was the DPS unaware of the objectives and their importance? Was he unaware of how to enforce them, or did you get the impression that he actually thought he was carrying them out? And forgive me, Chair, these questions may not be answerable, but I would be interested in your impressions.
Yes, Councillor. When I spoke to Mr. Shakapur on my first visit, he said that he wasn't aware of the conditions in relation to recording staff training. As a personal licence holder, he would have received training in respect of licensing and the objectives which he would have to uphold. So in my mind, I'm quite certain that he would have been aware as to what his requirements were in order to comply with the conditions attached to that licence.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Watts, how many premises do you visit in a year, say?
We tend to visit premises whereby they've received a new licence, there's been a variation on the licence, or as a result of a complaint. So it's we wouldn't just go into a premise and do an inspection. We don't have the resources to do that. So it's led by complaint, grant of licence, variation. I couldn't really say the number of premises that are visited throughout a year. Sorry.
Are you out once a week, once a month?
Every day we'll visit a licensed premise. So that will be as a result of a grant or a variation or following a complaint received.
So you've got a great deal, you and your team, a great deal of experience under your belts in regards to, you know, spot visits. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
So in relationship to the premises that you generally visit, how would you rate this particular premises?
I would consider the inspection resulted in showing that there was very limited compliance with the conditions attached to the licence, and I got the impression that Mr. Shakapur, he said to me he didn't understand and he didn't realise that, as I've already said, being a personal licence holder, he has ultimate responsibility for the day-to-day control of those premises. He's also the premises licence holder. He has received training under the personal licence requirements for him to get his personal licence, and therefore he should have been fully aware of what he would have been required to do in order to comply.
Thank you.
Forgive me, Chair. Could I just one more question? Can I just check out that I've understood what you've just said, that although the license holder has conditions which govern the way in which the operation should be carried out, he did not give the impression that he was aware of what those conditions were and was therefore not carrying them out. Am I right?
Yes, that's how I understood it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Joanne, any questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, there we move on to JTI. Mr. Bowyer, is it?
Mr. Howell.
Mr. Howell, sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone, again. I'd just like to pick out a couple of points from the submission that we made in Appendix 3, I think it is. I mean, obviously, the police and trading standards have both picked up on the fact that, you know, the sale of illegal tobacco is a problem. We'd just like to reinforce that by saying what we've seen at this premises isn't untypical. The concealments as well are quite common, and we're aware of many varied forms of concealment, hidden trapdoors, hidden areas in shops, even behind showers in some shops, which are elaborately concealed. So those are quite common ways of products being concealed. Often they're opened by remote control devices or switches on the countertop. So although they may appear very difficult to gain access to, they are in fact designed to allow quick and easy access by those people in the shop who know the products are there for sale. One thing we'd like to point out is that although we didn't test purchase this shop last year, we did visit about 22 stores in the Birmingham area, and we identified 9 that were selling illegal tobacco products to our test purchasers. So we hope that, you know, whatever recommendations that you come to today, the decision acts as a deterrent to those stores in the area, and also shows that you're supporting legitimate businesses out there in Birmingham that are lawfully selling tobacco products and alcohol. So really, that's all I'd like to draw attention to from our submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Now, Mr. Howell, you've seen the list of 107 packets of illegal tobacco. Which ones of those are JTI products?
Of the 107, 41 bear our trademarks.
Right. Okay then. Councillor Sharp.
No, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Straker-Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question from me, really, which is that I think you mentioned that you'd come in contact with 9 sites selling illegal tobacco, but that does not necessarily mean that is the total. That in fact the activity may be more widespread. I assume that's part of the reason for your wishing to see this activity deterred.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, we now move on to the licence holder. Miss Cartmel, I assume that you will be leading this?
Am I on yet, Chair?
Yes, it's up to you now. Yep.
Super. Thank you very much. I've listened to all the representations and I'm grateful for everyone for conducting themselves in such an easy manner. Just to give you a bit of background, sorry, I was going to call you Your Worships. I originally was a prosecutor for Blackpool Council. I started there at the beginning of the Licensing Act, and probably illicit tobacco is my bread and butter. We started off doing, I've probably come across Mr. Howell numerous times over my career, if not several times lately. So I understand the bigger picture when it comes to illicit tobacco. I understand the implications it has. That's why we started doing proceeds of crime for tobacco stuff, because we wanted to get a grip of it, because I understand the importance. So I'm not going to downplay the issue here, or what the bigger picture, as was said. And I understand that it does go beyond the individual transactions. There was certain comments made about it being an unusual situation. I can only reiterate Mr. Howell's comments. When I was in Blackpool, God, we've had people, it was a toilet wall and it was remote control. So you do see very, very sophisticated concealments out there. What I'd say is this is something, although it was difficult to access, the fact that you had to take it to pieces, I would say, isn't sophisticated. It would indicate that you know, some steps have got to be taken just to get to the tobacco. The premises licence holder, he went into business with the other gentleman. I'll call him Abdullah for ease of pronunciation. This is the gentleman that was present on the premises on the date of the visit back in March. Sorry, I'll just double check it was March. The premises was taken over by the licence holder in February. He went into business with Abdullah. My client's called Mohammed. He went into business with Abdullah, who purchased the shop, because Abdullah did not have a personal licence at the time. So it was he was really an employed manager and licence holder at that time. You'll note that the date of the visit in March, he wasn't on the premises. It was Abdullah that was there. And the comment that there was a look of surprise or shock on Abdullah's face, my client says he had absolutely no knowledge about this tobacco, and that was more shock that it had been rather than surprise. My client attended the premises straight away on that date and was shocked when the tobacco was not discovered but notified to him. This subsequently led to somewhat of a fallout between Abdullah and Mohammed. Obviously, Mohammed has put the licence in his name and has been employed to carry out the duties of a licence holder. So the fact that this had been these activities have been carried out whilst he is responsible led to a big bust up, and subsequently Abdullah, they parted ways, and Abdullah is no longer part of the business. They had a big fallout. Now, following the visit to the premises, once the review was notified, Mohammed did contact me Sorry, can I just check the date he contacted me? He contacted me, I think, back at the end of June. However, on the 18th of June, I had COVID, so I was unable to send him the training documents requested. The contact to me came as a result of the review and also a visit from licensing enforcement. Licensing enforcement did attend the premises and they raised certain issues regarding, firstly, the training records. And on that date, Mohammed indicated that he had trained the staff. There was only one member of staff, but it was only verbal. He hadn't realised that those documents required, or that he had to get them to sign for it. The other issue was the CCTV. Following that visit, that was immediately rectified, and the CCTV, when the licensing enforcement visited yesterday, literally they don't have 31 days because the CCTV wasn't recording for long enough. So I told him at the time, you're going to have to get a new hard drive. It's not the CCTV that's the issue. It doesn't record for long enough. So he's immediately had it rectified and got a new hard drive. But by putting a new hard drive in, you're starting from scratch. So that's the only reason why the CCTV wasn't rectified. I emailed Mohammed the training documents on the 6th of July, and he confirmed to me that that training had been done. I've seen signed copies of the training, and it was only last night when I spoke to him, I did say, well, why didn't you produce the training records to the council? He said he took them home, he hadn't took them back and put them in the file. I would ask you to ask questions. When the council went in yesterday, there were training documents there. It's not as if nothing's been done. The training documents were there. You can see the pro formas. I'm quite happy for you to ask my client any questions you want regarding the licence or his obligations under the licence, so that you can satisfy yourself as to his knowledge. The fact that those signed documents weren't there, that is an omission. I've made it very, very clear that the conditions require that the documents be produced immediately to the licensing authority or anyone else. The emergency procedures documents, my client did have it on his phone. He'd gone through it with his only member of staff. There's only one gentleman. When I asked him why it wasn't signed, he said, well, there was nowhere to sign on the document. And I said, well, that isn't enough. He did. It's not as if he was unaware of it. When asked yesterday, he immediately showed the officer the emergency procedures. In actual fact, the other gentleman that works for him is also Kurdish, Sarani. So the fact that an English copy was signed it is helpful. It's required by the conditions. But what he said is because his member of staff is Kurdish, he went through it with him and he explained it in his language. And because there was nowhere to sign, he didn't see the need to print it off. I've spent some time with the licence holder over the last few days, and I'm satisfied that he understands his obligations under the licence. I think up until now and up until sort of my involvement, he hadn't appreciated the importance of making sure that all the records were there immediately for inspection. So now there's no doubt about that, and he's very, very clear that those records must be available for inspection. I can email copy of the records if required. I think the only other issue I'd like to discuss is really going forward. My client has no convictions. He's a man of good character. He's never been in trouble. And prior to this incident, he's also, he thinks he's tried to do everything correctly. He understands now that these issues could lead to possible prosecution, to him losing a licence. I've explained as well, it's not only just that losing this licence. I said, this will follow you for years to come. I said, because this will prevent you from getting future licences. This is a very, very important issue. And he understands that. And he's almost indignant. He went, listen, I didn't sell cigarettes. I wouldn't sell cigarettes. But he understands that he is ultimately responsible for what goes on at that premises whilst he is the licence holder. He has training records now. The CCTV is sorted, and he issues an open invite to all the authorities to come into the premises whenever to do any sort of inspection. In fact, he would welcome the authorities to come into the premises. If there's anything they would like changing with the training records or any adjustments, he will make those changes. He wants to work in partnership with the police and trading standards and the council. And whilst I appreciate that this is a serious issue, I'd ask that you give him a chance, to prove to you that he can promote the licensing objectives and he can trade in a responsible manner. I think I'll leave any other comments for my closing remarks, unless anyone has any questions or unless my client has anything to say.
Well, I think the first thing is we'll hear from your client, if that's all right with you.
That's smashing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all right. Everything she said. So, about tobacco, which is my friend when he bought the shop, and he couldn't get the license. He tried to get the license, but he couldn't. And he said, you get a license and we work together. And which is, he bought 15 November this shop, and the license at this time it wasn't my name. It's a previous owner, which is name is Mahia. And after that, next year, which is February, I get my license, and we start together in this shop. But he was owner and I was manager and I was license holder. That's it. And then after that, when the police came and with the council and they found tobacco, and I asked him what is this and why they are here, and he said and he didn't tell me about that, because that's I'm the license holder, so that's if there something happened, it's happened to me. And ask him why he didn't tell me. He said, when I bought the shop from the previous owner, he said there is something like not that much, like as you said, like 170 and there is some Romanian and Polish, they want them cigarette, and we bought from some of them and we sell them to them because they don't want English one, they want them cigarette. And I said, why you didn't tell me at that time? And he didn't put in a contact. He put somewhere in the shop. And when they found it, I said, I never seen them, because really I never seen them. And I said, you have to tell me about this, because if there's something issue that's happened to me, to my life as well. And that's happened. So after that, he like 2 months before now, he completely left the shop, and I am the manager, I am the owner, I'm the everything now. So since that time, nothing happened. And about the camera, CCTV, when she's come the first time, 1st July, there is, because this camera was like this, when they start next month, the last month completely deleted by itself. And at that time, I told her, okay, I will change it. And after 5 days, I think it's 5 or 4 days, I call some technicians to fix it, and he changed the hard driver. And now, since from that time till yesterday, everything there, but just 3 days missed because there is wasn't old. It was old thingy with hard driver, because the new one starts from 5 July, and that's what's happened, because there is the old one is with the old hard driver. And about the training, I got everything in the shop, but I didn't realize I have to sign it. That's the all things. If you have any question, I can answer it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp, questions?
No, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Straker-Wells, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Trading Standards has painted a picture of almost complete non-compliance, records, CCTV, training, right across the board. I also gather that warnings have been issued to the shop on a number of occasions. So the question I would ask the legal advocate, are you saying that the license holder was aware of his responsibilities, but not carrying them out because he didn't realize how serious they were? And if he was aware of the seriousness, why was he not complying?
Thank you. I think, as far as I'm aware, that any warnings must have gone to the shop. So my client wasn't aware of any previous warnings at all. He was aware of his duties, but he wasn't aware of the requirement to keep the records. But it might be a question that you want to put direct to him. We're not in the same room, councillor, sorry.
Mr. Sheikh Kapoor, did you hear that question from Councillor Straker-Wells?
Yeah, I heard, but I didn't understand because my English wasn't good actually, so I didn't understand what his mean.
Martin, do you want to repeat that question?
Chair, if I may, yes, I can understand there's a difference between the license holder and the staff who are actually present in the shop. But equally, my understanding is that the license holder, the person responsible for maintaining the integrity of the license holder should be aware of what is happening in the shop. If necessary, should be inspecting himself, but is ultimately responsible, not just the member of staff present.
Do you understand, Mr. Sheikh Kapoor?
You know, I'm responsible for everything. So, but actually, I didn't because this shop was shop before. It was same shop and was everything same thing. So, the previous owner, they had this camera and they had everything same. So I didn't touch nothing when my friend bought the shop, and since I bought from him, and I thought everything should be all right. That's why this shop's like 3 years now. This shop, and I think the issue was the previous owner. They serve kids, they serve everything, and I don't know what's happened. No one's visit the shop to tell him, and that's the problem come from that time. And since we are there, no one have claimed about I sold tobacco or alcohol to kids or something like this. So that's the reason I didn't check the camera and the training. I done everything, so she said she can email you, which is my She got everything, so I just didn't sign it because I didn't know I have to sign it. That's it. So I didn't know I answered it or not.
Councillor Straker-Wells.
Thank you, Chair. For the moment, may I leave it there, and I'll obviously be listening to the closing statements. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sheikh Kapoor or Ms. Cartmel, on page 9 of the papers, it says, and this is part of the Trading Standards report, he appeared not to be aware of the conditions of his premises license, stating that no one had told him and he doesn't read. Now, Mr. Sheikh Kapoor, you did undertake the training to hold a personal license. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And part of that training was to read and to write exam results. Is that exam papers? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you do know how to read English?
No, they read for us, and I answer it. But I can't read, but I'm not that much like good, pretty good. But because I study in my country, so but not as good as should be.
So, in reality, Ms. Cartmel.
Sorry, can I just clarify, because this is, I don't know whether it is with my client, Mohammed, yeah, is, I don't know whether something got lost in translation, but you read English, don't you? You can read English.
Yeah, I can't read.
Of course, your worships, sorry. I only know this because when I was doing, obviously, preparation to check that he understood the licensing objectives, I sent him a questionnaire last night. So with, some questions on, like the personal license exam, because it's not, there's no point in just doing training, but I want to check that they actually understand it. So whether that was a miscommunication then, but there is no doubt, and I want to make that clear, he does read English, and that's, can you just confirm that, please, Mohammed?
Yeah, I just, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I fully appreciate that then. Now, let's go on to a few other things. Now, we heard from Mr. Elson that there were about 100 packets of tobacco on the shelves in your store. Now, having 100 packets of tobacco, how much value is that in terms of pounds and pence?
I didn't know that because I didn't sell them. My colleague sent them.
No, we're not talking about the illicit tobacco products that were found. We're talking about the amount of packets that you would normally sell that's on the shelves. And Mr. Elson said he thought there were about 100 packets.
Yeah. The English one, you mean?
Yeah. So there was 100 packets. How much is that in terms of value? How much would you spend on purchasing as a shop owner?
Some of them, so 10 in box, so like 70 or 80, depending about mark, and but normally like 70 to 100 pounds. So 10 of them. 10 box.
10 boxes.
Yeah, 10 boxes. So like 70 pounds to 100 pounds. So depending about product.
Okay. So 107 packets of tobacco.
Yeah.
Hidden away in your shop.
Yeah.
Is worth how much?
I didn't know. I didn't know.
No. But if there were 107 legitimate, proper packets, hidden away, how much is that worth?
I think there shouldn't be like a English one, so should be cheaper because, as you said, they are illegal, so they shouldn't be like this price. But maybe like 170 if you like 500.
Okay. Well, perhaps, when people are summing up, they can put a value on the purchase of 107 packets of tobacco, because you know, it does seem to me an awful lot of tobacco, and you know, I just want to get to the bottom of it, because to me, if you had 100 packets on display in your shop, then it's like the equivalent of wholesaling tobacco, having 107 secreted away somewhere within the premises. Not necessarily by you, but having 107 secreted away. Now, how many packets of cigarettes do you normally sell a week?
Most of them we sell in weekends, so maybe like the two or three sleeve in the week.
Well, no, hold on. You're talking about sleeves now. How many packets? If I want to buy a packet, 30, I will go and buy 20 cigarettes.
Yeah, so 30 packets.
30 packets.
Yeah, maybe. So all week, 30 packets, or maybe less.
Okay, 30 packets all week. So 107 is like the equivalent of nearly a month's worth of cigarettes. Yeah?
Yeah, but I didn't know he sold them or he just keep them, or because I haven't got any information about that.
All right. Now, when did you actually purchase, you or Mr. Elias, purchase DC Minimark?
What was I sorry, I didn't understand.
All right. DC Mini Market.
Yeah.
Right. When did you purchase it?
When we take over.
Yeah.
It's like 15 November 2020, but my friend take over.
Okay. Yeah, that's Mr. Elias.
Yeah.
Right. But you were working there.
I will help him, at that time, But his license wasn't my name.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So that's the 15th of November.
Yeah.
Right. And then you took over when?
This year, May.
You took over in May?
Yeah.
When did you become the license holder and the DPS?
I think it was February, or I think it was February or January.
In February.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So you took over in February.
Yeah.
And you had a letter sent regarding that the council had been informed that the shop had been selling illicit tobacco, and these are your responsibilities.
Yeah.
With a whole list of things to do. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I told my colleague, "Are you doing this?" He said, "No, maybe the previous owner doing this. That's why they send letters, because he said because the COVID-19 and everywhere was closed, and maybe somebody claimed about the shop. But now, so after that, I think little bit everywhere open, and that's why they sent now maybe the previous owner." And I said, "You sure?" He said, "Yeah, I didn't do nothing." So, because I'm just work sometimes. I didn't work at that times all there. So I wasn't there all the times. Even when you council and police came, I wasn't there. And because he didn't understand English very well, he called me come to the shop. I didn't work at that time at the shop. If you ask it, they know that.
Okay. Now, as a DPS, you know that there are 4 licensing objectives. Can you tell me what give me two of them. No. All right then. Let's move on.
If he's there,
No, it's all right. You know, I'm not trying to catch people out. I'm just trying to find out how aware people are of their responsibilities.
Chair, sorry.
Go on.
I had this issue with him last night when I've explained the licensing objectives and then he couldn't repeat them parrot fashion. But I asked him about Challenge 25, about what types of ID and everything else. So could you go through sort of the stuff behind it, please, bearing in mind the language barrier? He does understand the promotion of the licensing objectives.
Oh, you mean I have to ask them for so there is 25 challenge and ask them for if they are like look like 25 or under like this, I have to ask them for ID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one.
Yeah.
What else?
And if they are drunk, I shouldn't serve them. And if the and else I shouldn't give to the children. Yeah. And anything like alcohol and tobacco to children, so I shouldn't serve them. And I have to start from that time. It is mentioned in my license, so it's 9 to my license says in 9 to 11 at the night. So I'm not allowed to sell out at this time.
Okay, all right. Okay, I've got no further questions. Does anyone else? No?
No, thank you.
Okay, well, we now move to summing up. Let me get this in the right order. Just hold on while I call my script up. It's all right, I've lost my place on my script. Now, closing submissions. Mr. Howell, can you, or do you wish to give a closing submission?
No, thank you, Chair and other councillors. No, nothing to add to what I've previously said before. Thank you.
Okay. Sharon Watts.
Hello, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to add, after listening to Mr. Shaker-Paul, it does suggest that he can read. He's had his licence since February, and obviously there are conditions on the licence which he hasn't been complying with, and he stated that he left everything as per the previous licence holder. Had he have actually read his licence conditions, he would have realised that in relation to his CCTV, it would have been his responsibility to ensure that the system was maintained at regular interview to ensure it was working correctly. He clearly never read any of the conditions on that licence. So, as you know, from my point of view, he hasn't been able to uphold the licensing objectives.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones, West Midlands Police.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the current DPS and licence holder has obviously been involved with the business since the very start when he was taken over with his colleague. This would imply by its very nature that he's been involved in the business since Trading Standards received the intelligence that the premises were selling counterfeit and illicit tobacco. Also, I'd like to point out that the tobacco was concealed in the premises in such a way that it never been discovered without the use of a specialist dog trained in tobacco recognition, which to me shows pre-planning and deceit by the premises to cover their illicit activities. Birmingham Council Licensing Enforcement have informed of various breaches of the premises licence, which again to me shows lack of management or poor management. As they have said, it's incumbent on the premises licence holder and DPS, who happens to be the same person in this case, that they are aware of their responsibilities and conditions on licence. This obviously hasn't happened. The premises and the current DPS and premises licence holder has been given various opportunities and various pieces of advice by both trading standards and the licensing enforcement team from Birmingham City Council, to which they have seemingly ignored, seemingly having no intention to uphold or promote the licensing objectives until it has come to this stage where we're in a position now that we're around the table on a licensing review where it has got serious, and the fact that the licence could be revoked. This appears to be the only reason why the premises licence holder and DPS has taken his responsibilities seriously. West Midlands Police have no confidence in the management of these premises, and councillors would recommend at this time that the premises licence is revoked.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, I will say the sound quality is absolutely appalling. You've got feedback, there is echoing. I think you need to talk to your seniors and see if you can get some headsets.
Apologies, I am in a meeting room that's used all the time. It could be the connection. My apologies. We don't use the same room all the time, which is a bit of a nightmare for us.
I do understand, but I'm just saying that for future knowledge. Okay, we now move, if you can turn your sound off, I'd appreciate it, Mr. Jones, thank you. We now move to trading standards to summarise their case.
Hello again, Chair, councillors. Yeah, I would just echo, sorry, it's Dawn Bunsen. I'll just echo what Christopher Jones has said, really, that the licence holder, Mr. Sheikhpour, doesn't appear to have a full understanding of what his obligations are. And despite having received advice from trading standards on 2 separate occasions to the premises of which he should be receiving all of the any post that comes there regarding the premises and its license, and also from what licensing have said, Sharon Watts, that he doesn't appear to have read the licensing requirements. So on that basis, as I say, I echo what Christopher Jones has said from West Midlands Police, and the committee consider all outcomes at their disposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Elson, do you wish to add further comments or not?
Yes, I do indeed, Chair, if I may. Firstly, I'd like to say I think we're all grateful that Victoria Cartmel has taken this particular case under her wing. But there are a few, I think, fundamental errors that need to be addressed here. The first one is that back in December of last year, when I issued an advisory notice and a warning to Mr. Sheikhpour, he was actually there and he actually signed my notice. And not only was he given a written notice about what was required and all the information that he needed to ensure compliance, I actually told him what it was as well, because we don't just go in and give the information and walk out. I was actually advised as well. So he was actually there, so he did know about that legislation. I think also that it must be remembered, and I always say this when I appear in front of this committee, that the licence is a privilege and not a right. Okay, and with that right, with that privilege rather, comes a certain level of control. Now, it must be remembered that this licence was granted in November. That's a month before I attended the premises. So since November until yesterday when Officer Watts visited, he should have known what his licence said. He should have known what his licence said in November before all this started. And certainly after the events in March, when the illicit tobacco was discovered, if I was in charge of that premises, I would make sure I complied with every single thing on my licence. Because the document is there. They have the documents when they receive their licence. They work through them. And I'm going to speak plainly, it's not that hard to comply with that licence document, because you just work your way through it, a series of points. And to me, the level of control has been lackadaisical, haphazard and varied, even after all the interventions by trading standards. And from what I've heard today, and I can only speak from what I've heard today, certainly the visits that I did in December, the letter that my colleague, Mr. Warmington, sent in February, and the action by Officer Watts following all of that, we might as well not have bothered, because nothing has happened. It has been fundamentally ignored. It is implicit in a licence that control is exercised by the licensee. You, the councillors, grant them that licence on the understanding that they do that they train their staff, that they know what the licence says, and there is just no control, none whatsoever. And irrespective of the actual tobacco that was found on the day, the reaction to my colleague, Officer Watts, when she went, was just ignored, and I can't say anything else. And I am grateful that Victoria Cartmel is getting involved, and hopefully it will change. But from what I've heard today and my experiences, that the place has been run on a sort of hand-to-mouth basis, and that's not good enough. I don't think that's good enough, because any illicit tobacco or counterfeit tobacco, as all my colleagues alluded, it is just the tip of the iceberg of something else, and that really needs to be addressed. Personally, I think that. There are implicit conditions when you give a licence, and they haven't been kept to at all. And he has had this licence since November. I don't know what excuse could be used for that. That's the end of my submission.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cartmel, over to you to summarise your client's case. You're on mute.
Sorry, God, I hate not being heard. Paul, thank you for your kind words, and I'm hoping now I'm involved, we do get somewhere. I have a lot of Kurdish clients, so I do have somewhat of a breakthrough with some of them. It might be because of my plain speaking. I accept completely that it wasn't good enough how the premises was being run. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was, and I think it's only now I've got involved, and I think sometimes it's not always the language barrier, but everything breaks down. This business, whilst I appreciate he has had some involvement since November, when that letter was delivered in the December, he wasn't the licence holder then. He just worked at the premises. It was only from February that he took over as the licence holder and the responsibilities passed to him. I appreciate the point that's being made that he was aware of the issues because he signed for it, but I think he accepts that when the licence was transferred to him, that he should have got his house in order. Now, If we just look at the purpose of the review procedures, why do we have reviews? I did licensing under the old legislation, you know, and it was very fixed. When the Licensing Act came into force, you know, it was meant to be light touch bureaucracy, you know, and it's a permissive piece of legislation. That's why licenses are granted unless there are objections, and really any decisions shouldn't go over and above what's appropriate for the licensing objectives. And it's a problem-solving piece of legislation. That's why there are lots of different options. We don't go straight to revocation, and in my submission, revocation is a step of last resort. I appreciate the guidance does state that where illicit tobacco is found, that revocation, even in the first instance, should be seriously considered. Sorry, is the sound quality okay? Oh, I can't hear you, Chair.
There's a very loud jet going overhead.
Oh, I live near British Aerospace. Apologies, I'll just shut my door. Yeah, he's gone. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're on the flight path. Yeah, so it is problem-solving legislation. Now, the review was it's done what we wanted it to do. Obviously, we wouldn't like to be here, but the purpose of the review procedures is so that we can deal with the issues that are at the premises. And since the review has been submitted and we've got rid of the problem, Abdullah, he has gone from the premises, and now my client is the sole owner of the premises. So the issue, and I accept from trading standards when they say they had previous complaints, my client wasn't aware of what was going on, so I can't say that he was completely unaware of. Apologies, Your Worship. Not Your Worship. Can I just ask for 1 second? Can I just go and shut the door? The dog's just come back in. Your Worship. One second. It's just come round the back. I'm going to kill it. Thank you. I won't be a sec. Shut up. Get in.
For those of us who are dog owners,
Sorry.
For those of us who are dog owners, that is only too common.
Oh God, it's been so quiet throughout the whole hearing. It's done so well. Apologies. Anyway, like I say, I understand the scepticism from the responsible authorities in the council, but the fact that reviews are problem solving, that's borne out by the options that are available to you. It's not just do we revoke the licence or do we not? You know, it's not that straightforward. What we do is we look and we take a stepped approach, you know, and that's the view I've always taken. So there are several options open to you. You can take no action. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that you take no action because I don't think that's appropriate. You know, I'll make that clear from the outset. I think that this could be dealt with now by way of conditions. Now, I've attached all sorts of conditions to licences. I think in these circumstances, there's conditions like all alcohol and tobacco must be purchased from a reputable wholesaler. Invoices must be made available for inspection on the premises. I know what you're going to say. You know, well, he didn't make stuff available before, so what makes you think he's going to comply with this condition? This is recorded, yeah, and I have told him that if those documents are not made available, or if he has a condition that he does not comply with, that is an offence under the Licensing Act. In fact, I said, how you explain it to Kurdish clients, usually, listen, you'll go to court, you know, and it's something that, you know, you can go to jail for. It's a serious offence. It's like not having a licence almost if you break the conditions. There also, you can make a condition that the invoices must be retained on the premises for a period of 6 months. You can also require that if you are unsatisfied that the day-to-day running of the premises could be promoted by my client, then you could remove him as the designated premises supervisor. Now, what that would do is effectively suspend the licence until he finds a new designated premises supervisor to come in. Now, the police will get a chance to object to a DPS if they don't think they're capable. I appreciate if it goes with immediate effect that, you know, there's a handover period, but that is an option that's available to you if you aren't satisfied that the day-to-day running of the premises. If you can also remove a licensable activity, well, you can't really, obviously I can't tell you what you can do, councillors, but it would be ineffective. There's only the sale of alcohol. So then we get down to the other options. If you're not with me on adding conditions, then there's a suspension. And what do we use? We're not here to punish this licence holder for what he's done previously. We're concerned about the promotion of the objectives going forward. So if there are issues that he needs to be punished for, that will be dealt with by the courts. Going forward, and I know one of your sorry, not my colleagues, but one of the officers mentioned acting as a deterrent, like the Bassett Law case. If you think that my client's mind is not focused enough and you want to mark this in some way, then in my submission, this should be dealt with by way of a short suspension, which would stop him selling alcohol for a short period. It would ensure that all the documents were available on site. He could actually, within that period, say there was a 7-day suspension, he could invite trading standards in or licensing and check that everything was as they want it before the premises reopened. You know, and that's how he wants to conduct himself going forward. He wants to work with the council and with the police. So that short suspension would focus his mind, and then it would leave him in no doubt that should he come to the attention of the council, the police again, that revocation would be more than a serious consideration. You know, you're giving him a chance. I'm asking you to give him a chance. You know, I certainly will assist him. If he doesn't take up this chance and my assistance, then that's on him. But I think he has shown that he is willing to respond to any issues, and now he's under no misapprehension that he has to be proactive, not reactive. I don't know if I can assist you further, councillors.
Thank you, Ms Carmel, for your summary. I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting. The members and committee lawyer and committee manager will now go into our own private session whilst the subcommittee makes its decision, and everyone will be notified of the subcommittee's decision within 5 working days. Can I thank you all for the way in which you've conducted yourselves this morning, and bid you farewell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.